Ready to go ahead and get started? Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. I'm Josh Harder. I'm running for Congress. I know many of you know me. I know. Pretty excited. We're good for that. So I thought first and foremost, let me say a couple things. First, I want to give a real big thank you to our Teamsters for letting us use their wonderful hall. Thank you guys so much for opening it up. Big room with a lot of echoes, and we can talk about a lot of big ideas. What we're doing is this is the 12th, 13th, Nicole can keep me honest, I think the 12th of our edition of 16 town halls across the course of the district. Every single pocket, every single issue. And the reason for this is because I think the job of being a representative is not just a job title, it should be a job description. And that somebody seeking to represent this valley should be listening and talking to every single pocket of a very diverse, very large constituency. Every single city, every single different population that we've got. We've done town halls on a lot of different issues in every single city. What we're going to do here, and what we're thinking about doing is I'll give a little bit of an overview on me. I know some folks have heard it so many times, they can get a punch card and they're like, 10 subs is going to be free, Vicky, I promise. After 9 of these town halls, you'll get it. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the issues that we're really talking about, and then open it up. We can talk about some of the things going on in education in the Valley, or just open-ended, whatever is top of mind to all of you. But first, a little bit of background about me and my story and why I'm running. As many of you know, I'm a fifth-generation resident of this part of the neck of the woods. My great-grandfather came out on a wagon train in 1850. He came 2,000 miles in search of gold and then stopped 50 miles short to become a peach farmer. I got one laugh. All right, that works. I grew up in the city of Turlock, went through the public school system, even got a high school teacher here, which I appreciate. Go Mo High. And my story, very simply told, is this community invested a lot in me. Every opportunity I had was given to me by the folks here from the Turlock Journal and Modesto Bee, where I was a paper boy at age 12, to the teachers at Modesto High, to the Modesto Rotary Club and the American Legion that gave me some scholarships to go off to school. But I'm running for Congress because most kids in the Central Valley don't have access to the same opportunities that I do. We're living in an area where 80% of our residents are on free or reduced lunch, 80% of the kids in our school districts, where we have an unemployment rate twice the national average, and where on every single issue that I really care about, on healthcare, on immigration, on jobs, this is a district where our political leadership is pulling us backwards instead of forwards. And just to talk about a couple of those issues, I think it's most crystal clear on healthcare. We are a community where 50% of the folks that live around us are on Medicaid, 50%. And yet we have a member of Congress who last year, May 4th, 2017, voted for a bill that would have kicked 100,000 residents in this district off of health insurance. 100,000 people. It's a very personal issue for me. My younger brother David was one of those. He was born 10 weeks premature. He was less than 2 pounds when I first met him over at Doctor's. He spent the first 2 years of his life in and out of a hospital. And when he came out for the last time, my brother had a healthcare bill 104 pages long. Luckily, he had the insurance to take care of it. Now he's healthy. He's our best canvasser, knocking on doors in Turlock every day. But my brother would be without insurance until he's 65 and on Medicare because of our congressman's vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And that's not just my story. Everyone in this room and everyone in our community has a loved one who's in the exact same boat. And that's what's at stake in this election, is making sure that every individual in the Central Valley has access to affordable health care. And it's not just health care. I mean, we are a district where immigration is the economic and social fabric of our entire community. You got to be blind driving through the Central Valley looking at who we are and not to see that. I see it every single day. We have a woman in our campaign who's working 2 part-time jobs. She's a student at Modesto Junior College. She wants to grow up, be a pharmacist, work hard and get ahead, live the American dream. And yet she was carried over the border when she was 3 months old. Her DACA deportation protection expired last October. She could get told she's not welcome in our community any day of the week. That's outrageous. There's 10,000 people with that story just in our community alone. And not only has our member of Congress never voted to support the DREAM Act. He's never voted against his party on immigration to push forward needed reforms. He actually went to one of these child detention centers where they're taking kids that are separated from their parents. He approved of it so much, he said he'd send his own kids there, which is just unbelievably outrageous and inhumane. That's why we're fighting this race. That's why the stakes of this election are so critical, because every individual in this community deserves a chance to stay here, work hard, and get ahead. We're not going to win just by talking about those contrast issues. We have to present a positive vision. How are we going to move forward in the Central Valley? An area that we have been left behind for so long. We've had a series of political leaders that have not been fighting for the interests of a district where we have so many challenges. And many of you know I like to think a lot about the symbol of Tri-Valley Growers, the old peach cannery, now Seneca. Teamster organized. I was talking to some of the Teamster folks that got laid off. If you look back 20 years ago, that cannery had 10,000 jobs. It produced 50% of the canned peaches in all of America. Anybody in America that has served a canned peach in their school lunch, it came from us. That cannery went from 10,000 jobs 20 years ago to 2,000 jobs just a little while ago. And now they're getting laid off for good. Most of the cannery workers have already lost their job. I was talking to Rocio Mejia and some of the folks that have lost it. And many of them are still having trouble finding a new job, and the ones that haven't are having to move or drive hours away to find another opportunity. The forces of automation and globalization are not occurring just in Modesto. We see them in Ohio, we see them in West Virginia, we see them all over the rest of the country. The real question is, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to fix them? Because we really have two very simple options. Number one, we can lie to people. We can tell them that this is caused by immigrants coming and taking their jobs, that it's caused by starting trade wars. Maybe we should start a trade war with China, which is really going to hurt farmers in this district. Or maybe that somehow we'll fix it through trickle-down economics, when that has never worked, ever. I don't think that's right. I don't think anybody in this district really believes that the way we're going to move forward on our economic challenges is through telling people that. Instead, we have to invest in the infrastructure and the education that we're seeing all the time. Just to talk about one program that I see as an alternative, I was at a high school that takes 100 kids at risk of dropping out. Teaches those kids how to install solar panels, drive a forklift, operate a robot. In a district like ours, we're 84% of adults. 84% of adults. Oh, wow. Whew. All right, good. Let me know if you get hot. We can talk more, but now my voice magnifies. In a district where 84% of our adults don't have a college degree, that high school graduates kids, they get a job at $20 an hour the day after graduation, because they have the skills to join Solar City, Gallo Wines, and have a career with a future. It's a great apprenticeship model. And yet, that program and programs like it are federally funded and are getting zeroed out in the same Trump budget that made room for those trickle-down tax cuts. So if you want to know what we're fighting for, what the issues in this campaign are, that's it. Making sure that everybody has access to health care, making sure that we're pushing forward immigration reform in a district that depends on it, making sure we're creating more jobs and economic opportunity in a district where most people don't have those answers. And if you look at not just the local issues, you can see the whole spectrum of why this district is critical across the entire nation. Because this district is a purple seat. That means we have a lot of people who voted for Hillary and a lot of people that voted for Trump. This was the third narrowest margin of victory of any race in the country in 2016. And that means that we actually have a very strong voice here. And we're seeing that in the national eye. We saw President Obama come on out just, I guess, a week from today, come on out to California. Probably the greatest thrill of my life, being on stage with him. It's pretty cool. He could have gone anywhere in the country. He could have gone anything with his first campaign appearance since 2016. He decided to come to California, and he decided to focus on these congressional districts that absolutely need to win in order to get representation that is actually focused on the needs of their constituents. We've seen it on the other side too. Mike Pence has now come out 3 times, fundraising and helping out the other guy. My opponent, Ivanka Trump, came on out. She's been supporting him pretty heavily. That's their best and brightest. That's what they got. Personally, I take Obama. But that's what we are working with. And that's why we need all your help to get it across the finish line. And let me just close this part by talking about a moment that I think about a lot, which is election night, November 2016. 2 years ago. It feels like a lot longer, I know, but it's just 2 years ago. My now wife and I had a election night party. We had all our friends over. My wife actually baked 50 cookies in the shape of all 50 states. And we had all this blue frosting that we were going to put on the states when they were called. We thought this was like the best idea ever. We were so excited. Needless to say, we had more blue frosting left over that night than we had hoped. But more importantly, we were shocked and devastated by what we were seeing. We felt like the results of that election did not reflect the America that we knew, the America that we loved, an America that celebrated diversity, that focused on the needs of the powerless as opposed to the powerful. That's not what we saw that night. And more importantly, I knew that the people that I loved, the folks like my little brother David, who has a pre-existing condition, the immigrants in our country that need help, the folks at plants like the cannery that are losing their jobs, that their interests were going to be under constant attack over the next 2 years. And I made a commitment that night. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew I wanted to feel differently 2 years later. We are now just 7 weeks away from that opportunity, 53 days from feeling restored, from feeling like the vision of a country that we all, I believe in, that many of us believe in, is actually accomplished. But to do that, we're going to need a lot of hard work in the next 50 days to make that happen and to restore that vision that we're fighting for. Thank you. You guys are clapping. With that, let's open it up. What do you guys want to talk about? We can talk about education, we can talk about ourselves, some of the issues. What's top of mind to people here? Yes, ma'am.
So how does your healthcare program work? Would it be a Medicare for all type program? Do you more for taxes or?
Yeah. I believe that healthcare should be not a privilege afforded to only a handful of people, but something that becomes a right for every single American to have affordable and accessible care. I think that's the right thing for our society. We can talk about how to do that. I believe the best way to do that is by expanding the parts of our healthcare system that already work the best. So when I look across American healthcare, I see Medicare as an area that has by far the lowest costs. It's cheaper to insure a 65-year-old on Medicare than a 64-year-old on private insurance, even though they're younger. It has the highest patient satisfaction, the best patient outcomes. You get the best care when you're under Medicare, and that's why so many people that I hear about, when they get that card in the mail when they turn 65, they're pretty thrilled and excited by that moment. And I think we should be making sure that that program is more accessible to most folks, to more people in America. Because in this district, we have a lot of challenges. We saw premiums last year on the health exchange markets in Stanislaus County. Premiums last year went up 24%. 24%. This year, due to some of the votes the Republicans pushed around repealing the individual mandate, around sabotaging some of our healthcare markets, next year, we will know for sure in another month or two when the rates come out, but the Center for American Progress estimates that for a family of 4 in CD-10 in our district, a family of 4 will pay $3,200 more in healthcare next year. $3,200. I don't know a whole lot of families of 4 in CD-10 in our district that can actually pay $3,200 more for healthcare. We got to fix it, and the way we do it is we make sure we're expanding parts of our healthcare system that already have the lowest costs and working the best. Does that answer your question? Thank you. What else do you want to talk about? We can talk more about healthcare. Yeah.
I'm a reading specialist. My salary is 100% Title I funded, and we all know what's happened with Title I funds. Since I've become a supplemental educator and left the general education classroom, I've noticed a trend. Every year, more and more educators who are in that supplemental realm are losing their jobs. We are dropping like flies. I've been told that with the recent cuts to Title I education that this is the last year for me in this position. And I've got tenure. I'll have a job. But those kids will not have someone to help them. The kids that come to me are 2, 3, 4 years behind in their reading education. And I know that locally we have no control over Title I funds. That's federal. But what is your plan? What can we do? What can you do to help those kids?
Yeah. Thank you. What's your name?
Danny.
Danny, thank you for, where do you teach?
Manteca.
Manteca. Well, thank you for that story, Danny. I think I hear about this a lot. The reality is most of the dollars that go in our education system, I think as many people know, are paid out of state funds. But some of the most important programs, the stuff that is actually creating the opportunities for the special support services that so many kids depend on, like Title I funds for things like reading, are so critical, and that happens at the federal level. So it's not a lot of dollars in the whole span of it, but it's unbelievably critical programs that need to be defended. What we've seen a couple of attacks. Most importantly, we've seen who Donald Trump put as his education secretary, Betsy DeVos. If you look at her record, it's awful. She was one of the biggest proponents of what happened in Michigan, which is privatizing the education system, allowing unmitigated for-profit charter systems. A lot of scams were created, a lot of school systems that were looking more at their bottom line and making a large profit than actually educating kids. And you saw the state of Michigan go from around middle of the country in educational outcomes all the way down to one of the very bottom in math and science and reading. And yet, you look at most people that have a record like that, and you don't promote them, but that's the exact opposite of what we've seen. And we've seen the exact same thing happening. We've seen attacks on things like Title I, because I believe this administration does not have a vision for what public education can do. I think what we've seen over the last 2 years in Congress is that congressional Republicans of this administration have one goal, and that is passing as many tax cuts as possible. And they don't care what bulldozes they go over in the meantime. And we see that affect our community. We see it with the apprenticeship programs that I'm talking about. We see it with the program that you're highlighting. I think we need to actually show folks that this is an investment in the future of a district like ours. Because most kids in California don't get the same education. If you go 50, 60 miles away, you are still going to have a reading specialist if you're in Palo Alto High School, but not if you're in Modesto High, not if you're in the Manteca Unified School District. That's not the same equal opportunity that we're having all across California. And it's a federal job to make sure that we're actually doing a good job of equalizing it. The best thing that we can do, unfortunately the best hope I can offer, is that if we're able to win some elections, that's the difference between having somebody on the Education and Workforce Committee that is actually holding this administration accountable for everything they're trying to do and trying to hold their feet in the fire, versus a lapdog that's just going to acquiesce every single time they try to take another program away. That's my promise to you. Thank you, Danny. Yes, sir.
So to kind of follow up on the education theme, two parts. Part one, would you indicate your understanding of STEM education or the need for STEM education within our district? Part two, what as a congressman would you do to address that?
Yes, STEM education is critical, and it's something that we're not seeing equally distributed across all of America. There are high schools in California where there are 35 computer science classes, advanced robotics classes that are available, public high schools. And then you go to schools like Modesto High, where I went to school, and there's barely any. We are not getting an equal STEM education across all of America, and that's really hurting areas like ours that are not being prepared for the economy of the future. We all know it's coming. There are programs that should be working. So there was an Obama-era initiative to fund computer science programs in rural high schools. It's a great program. It was going to teach teachers how to teach computer science. It was going to make sure that we had incentives for more teachers to go into computer science programs. That program has been cut 95% by the Trump administration for no better reason than the fact that it had the word Obama in it, right? It's certainly not an ideological thing, because you could be a Republican, you still want your kid to get a good education. It should be bipartisan, and the only reason it isn't is because we have more politicians interested in bickering and creating their own partisan goals than actually fighting for the communities that they're from. I believe, writ large, you'll hear me say this a lot, that the role of the federal government in education is to be a catalyst, is to make sure that we're actually moving our educational system a little bit more towards where we know it should be going. STEM education, apprenticeship programs are two of the best examples of where I think the federal government should be playing the role of a leader, and those are the programs that are already being cut so significantly under the current budget, which our member of Congress supported and voted for. Yes, ma'am?
I know this election is not a big issue, but I'm from the country, so I was wondering.
Where are you from? That's not the country. It's like 2 minutes away from where I live.
But I was wondering, like, it's going to affect us here. Like, what does or doesn't happen with guns?
going to happen to guns? Yes. Yeah. We'll see. I think we're in a real moment of change. I think it's really interesting to me that the largest political protest, the largest political event in Turlock City history, 180 years of city history, the largest political event according to the Turlock Journal was the March for Our Lives, which was that response to the shootings in Parkland. There were hundreds of folks that showed up, and it was organized by just a couple 16-year-old kids at Turlock Women High. That's, I think, a really important and interesting moment, and I think it shows that all over the country, and especially here, people are looking at some of these school shootings, they're looking at some of these atrocities. We saw one in Bakersfield just a couple days ago, and saying, enough is enough. We don't want to wake up every single morning and see the news headlines and feel like there's another potential that a kid can grab a weapon of war and bring it into a classroom. California has already played a leadership role in a lot of that. So a lot of the rules that I think make a lot of sense are already in place here. So California already has 10-day waiting periods, which actually cut down a lot on gun suicides, which is a significant epidemic. 20,000 people a year across America die from gun suicides, and waiting periods really cut down a lot on that risk. We already have universal background checks here in California, so there's no loopholes through gun shows or other mechanisms. You have a universal background check program already in place here in California, and you have a ban on weapons like the AR-15. So that the weapon that was used in Parkland is not legally bought in the state of California. You can buy it in Nevada, and you can drive across the border. You can buy it online, you can assemble it, but you can't actually buy it in California. Those three rules have already cut down gun violence in America, or in California significantly. They've actually already cut it down by 60% just in the last 20 years that we have all been living with these laws. And so what I want to do is say, look, we already know what success looks like. We already have a program that's working here in California. We don't need to change it. All we need to do is take that program and make sure it's the same level playing field across the rest of the country. To make sure that you can't buy an AR-15 in Nevada and bring it over the border. To make sure you can't buy an AR-15 as an 18-year-old and come to your school. That's something that I think is broadly supported because we already know how much it works here in California, and so it doesn't actually change a lot of the regulations here. It just makes sure that we're safe all the way around the rest of the country. The second risk to this, which is actually ties in with your question, Danny, is, I don't know if you guys saw this news, Betsy DeVos is looking at putting $1 billion that is currently going to student services like having a psychologist at your school, taking that $1 billion and putting it into arming and training teachers. Yeah.
And yet I have to buy my own pencils.
And yet we have to buy our own pencils. Yes, which is just outrageous. I have yet to meet, maybe there's one here, I've yet to meet a teacher in our district who thinks that arming and training teachers is the right way to respond to gun violence in our schools. I think it's outrageous, and to do it at the expense of student services that are already being drastically cut, it just magnifies a problem that is deeply inexplicable. Yes, sir.
It seems to me that the only reason Jack Cannon is elected is that voters in our district don't really know his record. And that if they knew how extreme, what Koch brothers, right-wing, extreme agenda that he's voting, big banks, big oil, big insurance, big pharmaceutical companies, down the line, he supports an extreme agenda that a lot of voters in our district think he's wrong because he's slightly less insane on immigration than the rest of his party. To me, that does not make a lot of problems. And like you say, he's not delivered anything on immigration anyway, but he likes to talk about it because he appears slightly less insane than some of the other people in his party. But on everything else, tax cuts for billionaires, everything, healthcare, as you rightly point out, it's just a horrible record. And the more people learn about his record, it increases your chance of becoming a true representative for our district. What can you do to make sure that he can't run from his record? And that his record just gets widely exposed. I know you're torn between trying to stay positive and introducing yourself as a candidate for but people need to learn how horrible his record is. What can you
I can tell you're really on the fence, still undecided in the election. No, thank you for your question. I think I think there's a lot of truth to what you said. I think we have a member of Congress in this district who historically has talked and acted like a moderate and voted like a radical. He's telling us exactly what we want to hear when he's back in this district, and done exactly the opposite in Washington. Whereas anybody at his last town hall a year and a half ago? A couple folks. So Jeff Denham has not done a town hall for a year and a half. We've done 12 in the last couple weeks. At that last town hall, he stood in front of us and he said he would vote no on the healthcare bill, and then a week and a half later, he voted yes. He is somebody who comes back to the district and talks about the importance of immigration reform, as you rightly pointed out, and then went back and actually voted against moving forward on any meaningful immigration reform. And so you're right. I think the greatest challenge we have is making sure that people focus on what he actually has done as opposed to what he actually says, because this is a guy that's voted with Trump 98% of the time in a district that voted for Hillary Clinton. It doesn't make any sense. We just got to make sure people focus on the actual way he's voted. The best tactic that I have found, and I'm open to ideas, is focusing on the individual impacts in ordinary lives here in the district. And so instead of me talking about the 23 million Americans that would have lost health care because of his vote, I don't know if you've seen one of our TV ads that came up a little while ago, but it's a woman from Modesto named Alyssa whose daughter has a congenital heart defect. She went to Jeff Denham's office. She begged him with tears in her eyes to please vote no on that health care bill because she knew if her daughter lost health insurance, she could die. Jeff Denham told her he would vote no on that bill, and then went back to Washington and voted yes. The best, it chills me every time I think about that, which is why I think we're forecasting those sorts of stories, because the way that there's so much misinformation out there. Jeff Denham released a Spanish language TV ad saying he supports streamers the exact day he voted against immigration reform. That happened within the same 24 hours. It's ridiculous. The way that we pierce through the cloud of all of that misinformation is talk about the ordinary stories and have those people tell their own stories. Everyone here has somebody in their life that has been impacted by the policy failures of the last 2 years. Telling those stories, if all of us tell those stories, that is so much more compelling than anything else we can do. That's my strategy. So far, it seems to be working. Nate Silver at 538 has given us a 75% chance to win and flip this district. He gave Hillary an 80% chance, so salt, take everything with a grain of salt. But I think it shows that there's real momentum in districts like this one because we have been so misrepresented by so long. It's time we actually have a policy, an election focused on the record of an incumbent that has really not helped on any of the issues that we care about. So.
What can you do as a congressman to bring more responsible employers into the valley? When I say more responsible employers, I'm talking about employers that are willing to pay a livable wage, or employers that are not going to pay a livable wage, that don't go through the unscrupulous thing of having anti-union busters and trying to not give their employees the right to form a union.
Yeah, there's really two pieces to your question, so let me take them both in time. One is just how do we attract more employers in general to the valley? And then the second piece of that question is how do we make sure that employers that are here already and the future ones are actually responsible employers like the ones you're talking about? The first question I think is a little simpler. We are a district where we know we have so much talent. Just look at the 99, look at the 205 every single day, and you'll see all the people that are commuting over to the Bay Area. We know we have the skills to do those jobs. We just need to attract the employers to come on over. It used to take me 10 minutes to get from Turlock to Modesto. Now it takes me 30 in the morning because so many folks are commuting elsewhere. And so what I want to do is make sure that we are creating incentives to create more jobs, more high-paying, good jobs in areas with low unemployment. So this gets a little bit wonky, but I would index the unemployment rate to the payroll tax, which means that every payroll tax that an employer pays is less if it's in an area with 10% unemployment than if it's in an area with 1% unemployment. That's going to be something that's going to create an opportunity to pull the jobs where they're most needed. We don't need to create more new jobs in Mountain View. We We need to create more new jobs in Modesto. This is where we already need them, and we need to make sure that we have the incentives to do that, because California doesn't have those sort of opportunity zones, because we have the same taxation rate across the entire state that doesn't work for the valley. We got to be able to fix that, and a federal government that is responsive would be able to do that, and that would make a big impact in a district like this one. The second point that you mentioned is how do we, even if we attract more employers, and even if we have the skills here, how do we make more employers responsive? And that's why I think we are in a period where unions are under deep attack. We're seeing with the recent Supreme Court decision, Janus mostly affected public sector unions. We are seeing that this administration and the Supreme Court is doing everything in their power to undermine the support of working people. There are a couple things that we can do. Ultimately, we just need political power in order to impact them. But I think we need to move forward on things like card check, make it easier to organize employers no matter where we are. I think we should make a national, a federal government legislation that bans right to work. Now, Jeff Denham may even vote for it because he doesn't know that California isn't the right to work state. For folks that were missing that, he actually is not very informed on some of the union issues in California. So those are some of the things that we can actually do to make sure that we're creating it. But ultimately, we got to win some elections to do it. Yes, right here.
What are your thoughts about water in the county regarding storage, the aquifers and subsidence?
Water should not be a partisan issue. We have a history of Republicans and Democrats in the Central Valley working together on the water needs. Central Valley wouldn't exist without the water that we have today. We have two main threats on our water. One is political. So we've seen the state water board cut water allocations by 40%, which would lead to billions of dollars of losses, tens of thousands of jobs. They did that ignoring the science that it would impact, and ignoring the economic devastation that would happen in an area like this one. And I think it's dead wrong, and we have to do everything in our power to fight it. Second political risk is the Delta tunnels, which would expand on the allocation problems by shipping 36,000 gallons of water every single day from Northern California down to Southern California. Just think about that, 36,000 gallons. You probably don't have a good sense of what that is, but it's a lot. It's a lot of water. Jeff Denham actually voted to fast track the Delta tunnels. He says he's against it. He actually voted to fast track it after taking thousands of dollars of campaign contributions from farmers down in Southern California who would profit immensely from that vote. So that's one area where I think I differ significantly. I will never vote to fast track the Delta tunnels. I will do everything in my power to stop them and make sure that we keep the water that we have right here. But then the second challenge to water we have in the valley isn't political, it's just environmental. We went through 7 years of drought. That wasn't caused by Sacramento, it wasn't caused by Washington, it was caused by the world that we live in. We need to make sure that we're putting together the water resources for the next 150, 200 years into the future. We do that by actually investing in programs that are important. So you mentioned water storage. The site's reservoir is something that Jeff Denham has been talking about for 25 years. For 25 years he's been talking about how important it is. He has yet to appropriate a single dollar for it in 25 years of being a politician in this district. And in fact, it hasn't even broken ground. This is a program that has been talked about since the 90s, and it's not environmentally hazardous because it's off river. It just hasn't gotten done because we haven't had the strong enough political leadership in the valley to actually accomplish it, and that's going to be my goal. Thank you.
So I've heard from some people that you support the gas tax and they say that you don't. What's your position on the gas tax?
I think we made our position on that pretty clear. We wrote an op-ed and read it in the Turlock Journal. I think the issue here is that infrastructure challenges in the valley, infrastructure challenges in America have been completely ignored. Congress has abdicated its role on that. There are 57 bridges in Stanislaus County that are failing, according to the American Civil Corps of Engineers. I drive over one every morning. I drive over Briggsmore. I look at the rivets. Driving over, I'm like, oh man, I really hope Jeff Denham appropriates a little more money in Congress to make sure that we can fix this bridge. The reality is we have deep infrastructure challenges here in the valley. We're not going to solve them by create more roads. We need to make sure that we actually are fixing the roads that we already do have. And this is a especially challenging issue in the Valley because Jeff Denham sits on the Transportation Committee. This is his job. To the degree that we have a member of Congress that should be getting anything done, he should be making sure that we have the infrastructure needs met in this district. And that's not happening today. I think the right way to pay for that is by Congress actually doing its job. I think we need a massive dose of infrastructure. If you're looking at things where I think politicians on the other side have sometimes been right, I look at Donald Trump's 2016 campaign, where he campaigned on the importance of infrastructure spending. Instead of spending trillions of dollars in wars in the Middle East, what if we actually invested that in the infrastructure back home? That's what he said again and again and again. I think that actually makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, he got elected. He went into Washington. The only idea in infrastructure that they've come up with so far is privatizing air traffic control. I'm not making this up. This is their only infrastructure idea. We got to make sure that there's a massive dose of infrastructure happening here in the Valley. We can only do that if we have politicians in Congress who are more interested in focusing on the needs of their constituents than the needs of their corporate donors and politicians back home.
So you support that? Just to make sure.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Once upon a time, in schools, in junior high, you had a wood shop, you had a metal shop, and you had an electrical shop. In high schools, you had drafting,
Yeah.
you had home economics classes, you had a wide variety of classes that would actually prepare people with some of the skills they needed. And because of all the education funding limits, all those programs, if they exist anymore, the children who don't, are down to their homes. How could you, as a congressman, help locate money to give to schools?
This is one of the central platforms of our entire campaign, which is we are a district. We need to be pushing more people to go to college. But even if we double the number of adults with a college degree in the Central Valley, we still have a lot of other people that don't have that opportunity. We need to create pathways where those folks can get skills, have a future, have a career, without maybe going to college. And there's programs that are already existing, so it's not like recreating the wheel. But the key problem here is you can go and meet with a whole bunch of employers in the Valley, and they tell you we're not graduating high school kids with the skills that are necessary in their workforce. And then I go to our high schools and they say, well, they're graduating all these kids that go on and become unemployed. And I say, wait a second, isn't there a way to actually make this program work? And there are success stories. So let's talk about a program like at Patterson High School. So at Patterson High School, you can learn how to drive a forklift. That forklift of those programs are provided not by the school, but they're actually supported by Grainger. And by Amazon, some of the warehouses around Patterson. And it's a great program because Grainger says, hey, if you graduate kids with these qualifications and these skills, we will hire them at a higher than minimum wage job where they can advance through the workforce as soon as they graduate. And we'll pay for part of their education because of that. It makes a ton of sense to me. Right? I mean, if you have an employer that actually knows what they want and they can put that in the school system, that's the sort of program that I think makes a lot of sense. So that's the sort of thing that we need to be doing. Unfortunately, every dollar from the federal government is being taken out of that as a whole, and that's why programs at Ceres and Patterson that are really trying to be leaders in this are actually struggling to appropriate every dollar. And it shouldn't be the result of one heroic superintendent piecing together the right grant programs. We need to make it dead simple to have an employer that has a skill set that they need, be able to go into a school, and have that school give a certification so that kid can have success after graduation. That's what I want to be doing. Maybe one last question. I know we have to run in a bit. Yeah, yes, ma'am.
When people ask a question, would you mind summarizing the question? Because when people are projecting the voice forward.
Thank you. I will do that. Thank you. Yes, sir. I'll repeat the question to your point. What's going on with climate change? How important is climate change going to be in our particular election? And what's going on with the environment? I think we are a district that depends on the land, and that means we see the impacts of climate change every single day. We went through 7 years of drought, followed by a year of flooding. So we're seeing that, and we're not just seeing it in our water. We see it because Stanislaus and San Joaquin have the worst air quality of any area in America. We have the highest rate of childhood asthma. I had childhood asthma as a kid growing up here. It's so common. And a lot of it is not even caused by particulate matter created in the valley. A lot of our air pollution problems are created by pollution from China that is created in Chinese coal factories that comes all the way over the Pacific, and then it settles in the first valley that it finds. So up to 50% of the pollution that we're dealing with here in the valley, it's not caused by us. It's actually caused by folks in other parts of the world. That means we need to work together as a global community to fight it. Turns out we actually had something like that. It was called the Paris Climate Accord. It was a wonderful idea. It was working really well, all up until when Donald Trump decided to pull out of it. We are now the only country in the globe to not be a part of that. China, India, everyone else is doing their part except for us. And I think that's a huge mistake. I think it's a huge mistake because us in the Central Valley are bearing the brunt of the impacts of climate change every single day. And I also think it's bad because of all the missed opportunities. If we were part of the Paris Climate Accord, we would have the incentives to move forward on some of the green jobs that we need here in the Valley. As we're talking about apprenticeship programs, one of the best apprenticeship programs that exists in the Valley is learning how to build and install solar panels. And then you get a job and you go work at Solar City or one of the solar employers that are working all over the district. Those are great programs. You only have to walk out of your door any day to see how much solar potential we have here in the Valley. You only have to go over the Altamont Pass and see the thousands of wind turbines to see how much potential we have for wind. We just need to make sure that we have the incentives to do that. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to have that happen as long as we don't have the political leadership in Washington to put us in agreements like the Paris Climate Accord. All right, I said last question, but I'm really bad at last questions. Maybe one more last question and then I'll run. Yes, ma'am.
Following along with that, do you support a nationwide carbon fee tax that was collected by the government annually and distributed out to households?
Yeah. What are you talking about? There is no question we need to be doing more to mitigate and to adapt. There are a couple proposals out there. A carbon tax is one. There are also cap and trade programs that, like the ones that worked for acid rain. If you remember acid rain in the 80s, we had a huge acid rain problem in America. We put forward a program to actually cap a lot of the pollution that was coming, and it's been a huge success through America. So I think we have a history of cap and trade that has been very successful in this country. A carbon tax, I think, could make sense. We'd have to look at the particulars of what that actually would mean. The reality is we're facing a Congress where the vast majority of the Republican Party is full of climate change deniers, right? The member of Congress in our own district has said in the past that he doesn't know whether or not climate change is man-made, which is inexcusable in a district like ours, where any farmer can walk out, look at their district and say, obviously climate change is real, we need to do something about it. So I think, I don't want to be too focused on what is the right way to mitigate a problem that we have until we have enough political support to actually figure out what is the right compromise that's going to get us there. Because there's a lot of ways that we can get there. We can't do that as long as the vast majority of people in power today are ignoring that there's a problem to begin with and putting their head in the sand. All right, thank you. Over to Vicki. All right, awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here.
And I've been a volunteer with the Harder campaign since, I don't know when, a long time ago. And I'd like to invite you to join us in a couple of ways. First, we're a grassroots campaign, which is kind of another word to say we're just poor. That Josh Harder does not take any PAC money. So you give $5, you gave us $500. Any amount is appreciated. So if you could give us a little bit of that, it'd be very, very much appreciated. We are going up against Jeff Denham, who has a major amount of money. And you can go online and look at that list of where he gets his money from. And it's a lot. So we're on a skinny little budget. And so it's very appreciated. The other thing that you can do is you can go out and maybe canvass. And a few of you I know are like me going, what? Which that was my first reaction. try it. See what you think about canvassing. Go to a couple of houses. See if it works for you. Do it through the campaign headquarters. They'll give you a little training, give you a partner, and you'll go out or go out with a group. See what you think. Or do a little phone banking. See if that will work for you. They would appreciate help in any way that you can find to give it. So we very much need your support. I know Louise and I will be out at the flea market in Crow's Landing, and we'll be registering people to vote. You can also volunteer to register people to vote. The more people vote, the better shape we're in. So that's also something that you can do. So there's a lot of ways that you can plug in to help. You can figure out, I could give an hour a week. An hour a week would be terrific. 2 hours a week, whatever. It would be so appreciated. So in whatever way you can think to help, we would very much appreciate it. And I'd like to thank you all for coming today.